Hey traders, welcome to Market Internal Review for June 14th, 2023. Today was the FOMC meeting with Jerome Powell. At open, we didn't have much of a gap up. Add and Vold signaling strong bullishness right out of the gate. The 20 SMA trends potentially could give us some indication of a reversal of some kind or some kind of weakness. Trend showed a little bit of a potential balance early around 9:30. That disappeared though, mostly by 9:45, and we really saw nothing else from trend until 10:30. Watching these 20 SMA trends on add and Vold bands, we have to look at the price of SPY to see if there's some alignment. So one thing I noticed was the tick oscillations around 0 point, the highs and the lows did align with the price itself on SPY. You can see we had this dip when the histogram for tick showed an extreme low, or at least a 500 break. I guess this would be more of a medium break low. We had a decent high right out of the open. So decent alignment there, and the add and Vold signaling bearish potential trend is a cooling off of a rather extreme, very bright add band here. And you see a little bit of cooling off, but not a whole lot. So there were definitely parts of the New York Stock Exchange that must have been seeing some kind of selling, but it certainly wasn't anything that was a top holding within SPY. So you definitely would want to align a lot of your trades with mainly with tick and trend. And it worked pretty well today. We can see the session TWAP was presenting quite accurate levels for standard deviations and provided ample opportunity to take some trades, albeit some breakout style trades here and some more support style trades. Once we hit that 11:30 time, we start to see some weakness here in the market. We see a dump from rather high price of almost 440. I guess that's 439. We see a reclaim down here of TWAP for the short side right at a strong tick sell here. So we hit, what is that, about 900. Then we oscillate within the first standard deviation. With knowing that the FOMC event is going to be starting at 2 p.m. Eastern time, which is right here, basically what I was watching for was some kind of weakness. Knowing that the add and the Vold trends were mostly red, and right about noon, about the time we touched TWAP here on the session, you'll notice that we started to have average closures of tick under 0. We had a little bump here as we retested, but essentially the way I look at it is we built a top in price roughly about here. We broke above, failed to hold it, right? So here's the break, come back down to retest, we lose it, come back to session TWAP, fail to hold above it, and then we break down. And at that same time, tick average closures are under 0 for the rest of the time. Add giving a signal. We're no longer bright here on the band. We're mostly dark, so we're losing steam. The numbers here are the amount of NYSE stocks in advancement, and it's in decline. We're down to, by that point, I think we're almost to balance. Let's take a look here. Okay, so add was at 463, 270, 72 stocks were in advancement by this point. So we even went under 0, we're at 0 here. Okay, so lots of signs from add in the metrics table here showing that overall bearish. When all these metrics are red, we're seeing those average tick closures under 0. That's a good sign. For short side, potentially shorting pops, different things that you're obviously comfortable with doing, but So a lot of potential projections of a direction. Okay, then we see a cluster of extreme closures here. And you can see that insane tick low hitting negative 1300 in some cases. On average, I would say at least negative 1200. We stayed around there quite a lot. Add and vol bands have turned red, add specifically turning very bright red, strengthening the bearish side. We hit about 1,054 declining stocks, negative 1,200. Then you can start to see here this number. We're hitting negative 200, so we're running back up very fast, just as fast as we come down. Which, if you've traded FOMC, this is kind of the thing, right? Is there's an extreme volatile move in one direction, and then it knifes back in the opposite direction. It happens almost every time. It's a widely known thing. You can see it on Twitter, people sharing it right before FOMC every time, exactly what to do. And I'm not recommending that there's a common pattern. You can go look for yourself, but it's certainly something that's widely observed if you go look back at previous FOMC days. But my plan was to catch some of the short side if the data looked correct, and to me it did. The rest of this, I think, again, there was common patterns. You can go research those for yourself. There's a lot more risk in this side with this heavy oscillation, especially if you're an options trader. The options chain data, the IV, starts to go really insane, and no matter the product you use, the spreads start to widen, and your chances of losses exponentially increase as market fills and different things just really aren't going to be what you want. So, but overall, this was the market today. This was what the internals displayed. This rise above here, we hit over that previous day high. Once we broke that, right, it's very interesting where we broke the price down and where price halted literally right at the close. Okay, it's right around here at this previous high. We had this high wick here. So we have this slow kind of melt up, albeit a fantastic move if you were able to catch some of this. And then we had a nice move down. Very interesting to see what's going to come out of the rest of this week. Monday is a holiday, the Juneteenth, so I'm almost expecting not as much movement for the latter half of this week, given there's a holiday on Monday. I think there's a lot of settlement that happened today, but that's my opinion. Nothing real technical. Take a look at the tick levels. Okay, so tick levels did a pretty darn good job at pulling this high day price here. We can see that price naturally just resisted right here. We spent some time with significant tick right here at the open. But once we broke that, right, that's where that huge move came out. Then we see, I guess, my eyeballs went to this level here. Tick says here. Okay, so it saw extreme tick lows here, which we can see right around 12. And it marks this price out. And boom, that's exactly what was rejected, was not held, and we break below. And oddly enough, or ironically enough, the high swing back from that deep sell during Jerome Powell's speech stops dead in its tracks right where that tick was, that cluster of ticks in the price. So fascinating stuff. See more tick levels down here. Again, I think this indicator is incredibly effective. Love to hear your feedback if you're using it at all in your trading. Very fascinating the levels that it pulls out compared to what I can do just by looking at price. So let's take a quick look at the Qs. Okay, so Qs had a slightly more energetic day, I'll say, where we saw this similar rise after a little bit more of an aggressive dump in the morning, and those highs were actually retested versus on SPY. We had a lower high that was tested and held the price down below that, versus the Qs actually rose almost all the way back up to high a day. So it was able to break right back through this. So very strong tech. I know personally, I looked at NVIDIA at one point today and just my jaw dropped. They're at $429. Just incredible buying all day long. They never stopped. I don't know if chips as a whole is like that. I almost said Chips Ahoy. Not sponsor. MU. AMD, I thought had some selling. They're definitely a little bit more flat here. All right, let's take a look at Dow. Wow. Okay, I did not look at Dow today. So Dow is definitely weaker. Absolutely. Wow, they had a gap down. Okay, so traditional value, Dow stocks, the big names that have been around for forever, they're actually seeing a little bit more impact from the economical news there. I'm not sure what all that is, what all that means, but let's look at Russell here. Wow, look at that. Russell continuing down the entire day. We did see the strong dip here and just continued to see that. Barely the reclaim that SPY, and certainly not the reclaim that the Qs showed. Fascinating. Going back to SPY rather fast. Taking a look at weekly TWAP here. So weekly TWAP, wow, look at that. Whoa. Price went all the way up to upper, standard deviation, second standard deviation high. Rejects, bases back at the top of standard deviation 1. Dumps to weekly TWAP and breaks back and oscillates within. Wow. Very, very interesting. Another great trade right here. Two of them, actually. Crazy. Monthly TWAP. Okay, monthly TWAP staying up in that second standard deviation. Right? 1, 2, 3. Oh. Okay, 1, 2. So actually, this is the third standard deviation. So they're staying in this third standard deviation most of the day. Past FOMC, though, notice we reject that third deviation high and we stay below now. So where we've been up inside of that yesterday, we broke up into that with a gap. As I like to call it, we cheated our way up here. Now we've lost that and we're coming back below. So maybe that's a sign of things to come. I don't know, but you notice how price does this. It stays in one deviation, breaks back below, struggles, retests before it starts making a different directional move. Even with these large moves back down, right? We're testing these other sections before we make a decision, and then we bust up through. So here we see that we lost that. Interesting. Okay, taking a look at tick rather fast. Here's our high clusters early in the morning session. So that's wrapping that up rather fast. The rest of the time we're essentially oscillating right here in this range until we got a couple clusters low, which we already know because the MIT indicator showed this. Here's those extremes before FOMC, right? And then 2 is when Jerome Powell comes out, and look at that. I mean, immense selling for the entire New York Stock Exchange, deep into the low bearish area. And then we get that fuzzy end of day, right? This is not something I would try to use the clustering on and try to understand exactly where things might be headed from a directional standpoint. This is just noise. And you should always keep that in mind for things like FOMC. Looking at trend, here's those balance area hits that we had. We had like 1, 2, 3, and then we oscillate around that 20 SMA. Love to see this. 20 SMA on this chart, or really any chart for that matter. Small break into that bullish area, but not much. Strong sells here per the ad versus the VOLD, and a handful of those events. But still not strong bullish, not strong imbalance, and no bearishness. Okay, the ad today. Fascinating. So yet again, another dang near flat trend line. Wow, all day, right down into bearishness. Here's that 2 p.m. sell-off of JPOW. Got the JPOW going on down here, and a sharp reclaim. Here's 341, our old friend 341, hitting right around there. Hilarious. Our mid-range line showing a balance. We oscillate around there for a little bit, but yeah, mostly downtrend the whole day. So downtrend on ad, slight uptrend until that 2 p.m. Probably more about here. I think it was 12 on SPY. A lot more selling other than the top holdings of the main indices. The VOLD. Okay, here's VOLD. Here's an old level that we've got. I'm not even going to try to say what level that is. It's a big number. But look at this. Bounces off of it perfectly. Hit that rejection. Boom, JPOW time. Dumps off into extreme bearishness area. Retest the balance before dumping off again. So here we've got, here yesterday we had an extreme high on volume, but not as much follow through on the indices, I would say. Today we see mid upper starting bullish, back to balance, dump off into bearish zone, finish out right around there. So this area starting to be bearish for volume into declining stocks. This is enough declining stock volume that it should start to pull the market down. It could also just signify that there's a lot of profit taking, hedging. There's many reasons for this. But what's interesting to me is that price on the indices did not mimic this kind of H pattern here. If we go look at SPY, we see a little bit of that. But look, it bought back up, and we actually, dang, we almost ended the same price that we opened. SPY gained like 13 cents today. So very interesting. There could be with VOLD, this could be Dow, since we saw a lot of weakness in Dow, and the Russell. So we'll have to keep that in mind in future videos. I'll take the time to compare and keep that in mind with the analysis of VOLD here. So we could be seeing a lot of sector rotation activity, and just volume shifting between selling off in Russell and maybe buying the SPY. And so maybe that's why we're seeing such a divergence between the volume in the New York Stock Exchange versus SPY itself, and the Qs, right? Because tech was clearly having a day. I know Microsoft was seeing some strong buys. All right, so I think that concludes today's market internal review. Hope you did well today. Hope you stayed safe out there. And as always, thank you for watching and happy trading.